let me say, word in defense of reason in dialogue with faith.
Because faith is that proof. Faith unites us to that substance.
But reason, in order to realize its full potential, needs the horizons revealed by and truths contained in the faith. And not just any faith, but the Catholic faith.
So let's start with the beginning. What is the essential public purpose of marriage? Well, I say the essential public purpose of marriage is to attach mothers and fathers to their children and to one another. The essential public purpose of marriage is to attach mothers and fathers to their children and to one another. Now, why do I say this is an essential public purpose? Well, I mean it in two ways. First, it's essential in the sense that this job of attaching moms and dads to their kids is really quite an important job, because somebody has to take care of the kids, right? Somebody has to take care of the kids. Somehow, you have to get children from helpless infancy to adulthood. That's got to get done somehow. So that, in that sense, it's essential. But it's also essential in another way. And that is, if you didn't have this purpose, you wouldn't need marriage at all. If you didn't have to solve the problem of getting helpless infants into adulthood, you wouldn't need the institution of marriage. Now, let me illustrate what I mean. Suppose we were the kind of creatures that gave birth to our young, that were born pretty much mature and ready to go. Right? They didn't have long periods of dependency. Okay, like a snake or something. Right? The snakes hatch, the little baby snakes slither away, that's the end of it. Mommy snake, daddy snake, you know, they're not around. Right? There's not much call for pair bonding in the reptile kingdom as far as I know. Maybe some of the biology people are going to straighten me out if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's much pair bonding going on with the reptiles, right? Because the young are born alive. They don't need a mom and dad around. All right? So if we were that kind of creature, you wouldn't be thinking about marriage, particularly. Or if we were the type of creature that reproduced through some kind of asexual form of reproduction, right? Like we're a little single-cell creature and we just divide, or something like that. Again, you biology guys can straighten me out here, but not all beings reproduce through sexual reproduction, right? It's just some of the higher vertebrates and stuff do that, right? Right. Okay, so if you were not doing that, if you didn't have male and female, if that wasn't the way you reproduced, no one would have ever thought of marriage, right? It's because you have a mother and father for reproduction, and you have a long period of dependency that you need a social institution like marriage. So without that, you wouldn't need marriage. So that's the sense in which it's an essential public purpose. It never would have entered anybody's mind to come up with lifelong sexual fidelity as a plan. You know, I mean, it just wouldn't have entered the mind, right? So that's the sense in which it's an essential public purpose. Now, it's public in the following sense. It's important to think about the difference between a public purpose of marriage and a private purpose of marriage, because a lot of the debate confuses those two things, as a matter of fact, if you think about it. If I ask you, why are you getting married? There could be 100 reasons why somebody could say, I'm going to get married. You might get married because you really love the other person, you want to spend your life with them, and you've been through a 6-month pre-K class and you've got it all down. Right? That could be. On the other hand, you could be, you just want to have the dress, you want to have the big party, you want to irritate your previous boyfriend, you're trying to get away from your parents, you want to share expenses. You can have a whole lot of private reasons for wanting to get married, your personal reasons, right? There's all kinds of private personal reasons, private personal goods you could be pursuing by getting married, right? And all of you could name even more of why you might be getting married, right? Those reasons, none of those private reasons add up to a single public reason to why you'd have marriage in the first place. You don't need marriage as a public social institution in order for you to irritate your previous boyfriend. You see what I mean? That does not count as a public purpose. So when you hear people talking about marriage, a lot of times you'll hear them saying things, we want to show that we love each other. To which you say, that's nice, but why is that the public's business? Why is the government involved in that? We want social approval for our relationships. Same question. That's nice. I have a lot of friends. I love my sister. I love my best friend. I don't need marriage to do anything about that. It's none of the public's business. Right? The public has no particular interest in any of those kinds of relationships. If I break up with my best friend, if I quarrel with my mother, that's none of the public's business, right? It's sad, but it's none of the public's business. But those things do matter if you're looking at the relationship that's procreative in kind, right? Because then instability in the relationship matters. It has a public consequence, namely what's happening to that public purpose of marriage, bringing the children, attaching children to their mothers and fathers and to one another and to each other, okay? So that's the sense in which the difference between the public and private purposes of marriage is really quite important. Now, let's take another step back and look again at the public purpose of marriage as to, from the child's point of view. I want to look at it from the child's point of view. And I would put it to you in this way. What is justice for the child? What is justice for the child? I would say to you that children are entitled to a relationship with their parents. Children are ordinarily entitled to a relationship with both of their parents. This is justice for the child. And every child has a legitimate interest in the stability of their parents' union. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute, because the stability of the parents' union is the way that a child has a relationship with both of them. So if mom and dad are quarreling all the time, or if mom and dad don't live together, then the child's ability to be in relationship with both of them is hindered and sometimes completely thwarted, right? As probably some of you know well from your own personal experience and observation. You've seen families where the parents aren't living together and the child's relationship with one parent or the other is seriously impaired as a result of that. So children have an interest, a legitimate interest, in the stability of their parents' union. But, as every sensible person knows, children cannot defend their own interests. A child cannot march into court and say, see here, my rights have been violated, someone get over here and do something about it. Right? Which is the way grown-ups handle their interests, right? I mean, you know, if somebody violates your contract, you take them to court, right? Well, that's not going to work with kids. By the time kids are old enough to go march into court, it's too late. They only get 1 year to be 1 year old, right? That window of opportunity for them to be a child in a household at that age is gone. And so to really protect the child's interests, what we need to do is to protect their interests proactively. Before harm is done, we have to have a proactive institutional framework that protects their interests in advance of harm being done. And that's what marriage is. Marriage is adult society's proactive way of protecting the legitimate interests of children, interests which children cannot protect on their own. Now, a lot of my economics friends and libertarian friends want to reduce the family to a series of contracts, which means they want to reduce family law to a special case of contracts and property law. And I'll just tell you right now, just as an aside, family law has never been that. Marriage has never been that. And certainly relations between children and parents have never been contractual relationships. And the attempt to do that will be extremely destructive. But that is where the deconstruction of marriage is going, to redefining all family relationships in terms of contracts. That's, as I'll show you later on, I'll probably get a chance to give you some examples of that. But so marriage is a social institution that adult society creates to proactively protect the interests of children, legitimate interests of children, which they cannot protect on their own. And that is a legitimate public purpose that we can't do as individuals, and that we need a social structure, a social institution wrapped around us in order to assist everybody in doing that. That is the essential public purpose of marriage. The essential public purpose of marriage is to attach mothers and fathers to their children and to one another.